Greetings, leaders. Welcome to Leadership Is Podcast. I am your host, Jason Muhammad, founder of JM Leadership Development. I'm here to talk to you about Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. It's free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will even distribute your podcast for you on platforms like Spotify, Apple, and many more. You can even make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make in a podcast in one place. So listen, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. And always remember, leadership is influence and service.
Man, I've been through so many different situations. I've seen leadership in so many different avenues, and I've studied leadership for so long, both as a practitioner, where I was running a $100 million P&L for a Fortune 500 company, or as an advisor. That I just really like being that guy that helps you think of the best, the most efficient, the most effective way to get from where you are to where you need to be.
Greetings, leaders. Thank you for joining us for episode 48 of Leadership Is Podcast. I am your host, Jason Muhammad, founder of JM Leadership Consulting. Today's guest is Galen Bingham. We're going to be talking about what is an impactful leader. Many leaders leave an impact on those they follow, even in the industries that they lead. However, you have to ask yourself the question, is the impact that you're leaving a positive one or a negative one? Let's talk about it. Greetings, leaders. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Leadership Is Podcast, episode 48. I am your host, Jason Muhammad, founder of JM Leadership Development. Today's guest is Galen Bingham, founder of Killen Global Coaching and Consulting. Known as the leadership strategist, Galen is a certified executive coach with credentials by the World Coach Institute, International Coach Federation, and the Goldman Emotional Intelligence Organization. Galen has over 30 years' experience of leading in industry-leading corporations like Kraft Foods, Imperial Sugar, and the Coca-Cola Company. He has 6 years' experience as a brick-and-mortar franchise owner. Galen is consistently sought to advise or serve on premier nonprofit boards where he provides oversight in governance, board development, CEO selection, and organizational leadership. Welcome, Galen.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Great to be here. Always great to hang out with you, Jason.
Yes, sir. The same here, man. The same here. I often think about, the time we did I think it was a Facebook Live or a Zoom, something recording that we did. And man, look, listen, wonderful information. Great connection you are, sir.
Fantastic. Well, I'm glad we get to do it again. We have to make sure that we cut down the time in between connections.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, this pandemic, man, again, like we talked about, being off script a little bit. So before I get into who you are, well, actually, I'm going to start there, and then I'm going to ask you another question. So who are you and what you do besides the resume I just read for you?
Yeah, well, I am a long time business executive. Just much like many people. You go to a school that you think will get you recognized and get you noticed. And then after getting out of school, I started working for the largest company that I could get to return my email and resume. And from there, had my eyes set on conquering the world as the CEO or senior vice president of a large Fortune 500 company. And started doing that work. And the more of that kind of work that I did, the higher I got, the more I realized that, I just really liked being able to advise leaders on what it takes to be effective.
Yeah.
And so that's what's led me to the work that I'm doing now. Outside of that boring stuff, I am a father, I am a husband, And dude, I got a little girl that, believe it or not, is getting ready to go off to college. So my world is full.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I got man. Listen, I have two adults. One graduated from college, A&T HBCU, and then I have another one that's going that's in college, and one about to graduate high school and go into college. And then I have a freshman that's in high school. So busy times, man, we have, busy times we have. So I wanted to ask you, since you were talking about, the connection, shorten that time up, of connecting. And it kind of reminds me of this whole pandemic, which has produced all over the world a social distance. So how has this pandemic, affected you and your business?
Great question. Well, I have I've had two kinds of businesses. One was a brick and mortar business. It was a frozen yogurt shop, and that business was just hit incredibly hard, just with everything that was going on. That We ultimately had to make some decisions to close that business down, and transition all of my time to other things.
Wow.
And the coaching side of my coaching business and consulting business, that has just really taken off. We've found that a lot of companies were struggling with the same things that I was struggling with as an operator, and they were looking for insight. And that's been a blessing and an opportunity. Also, the barriers that typically exist with companies wanting to work with me, those just evaporated. So, for instance, I've had clients overseas in the past who want to work with me. They've heard about something that I've done, or they've listened to my podcast, and they want to get some insights, have me come out and talk to their team. Well, in order to do that, you'd have to put me on a plane. You have to fly me out to London. You've got to get me a hotel. You've got, pay for all of that stuff in order for me to sit in a room to speak with your people. Well, today, none of those things are possible right now. You can't really fly anywhere. I mean, you can fly now a little bit more so than you could a couple months ago, but you can't really do that do that business as usual. And so Zoom and WebEx and all of these video conference type platforms have really increased my business. I today have more clients outside of the United States than I do inside of the United States, for that very reason. Because now you can just, if we've got an internet connection, I can be in front of your team. I can help you reinforce those leadership strategies that you believe you need in order to make in order to have a successful business. So it's been a real blessing to me on the coaching and leadership side of the business, the retail side of the business. It's been a challenge that I can absolutely identify with.
That's interesting, and that's been somewhat of the normal, well, not normal, but similar answer that many other entrepreneurs that I have interviewed on this podcast stated about how, not having to travel, and which was a normal part of the business, but now doing most of it, virtual, has increased their revenue. And so it reminds me of another statistic that I read as it relates to workplace culture, and how workplace culture has improved 57%, since this whole pandemic has taken place, which I found very interesting, since no one is actually really going into the office, in groups like that anymore. But what we found out with that statistic is that uh, the relationships became more personable, right? Because you're able to be on the screen, but now here's a child,
Hmm.
running in the background, a little kitten or something trying to get your attention, or you see some art that's on the background there that makes that person now more approachable through this virtual link here. So that's interesting. And so now, when you mentioned about strategies, and you're known as the leadership strategist, what is a leadership strategist?
Yeah, well, a leadership strategist. Well, let's talk about what a strategist is.
Yeah.
So, if you were to just look up strategist, a strategist is a person who's skilled in planning action or policy, especially as it pertains to, or most notably as it pertains to war or politics. And some of the most famous strategists that you think of are like Sun Tzu, who's considered the father of strategy. You've got political strategists, people that help you think through political moves that you should make in government, that kind of thing. Winston Churchill, very famous and known for his understanding of strategy. And so that's really what a strategist is. And I came up with the phrase or the label of leadership strategist because, man, I've been through so many different situations. I've seen leadership in so many different avenues, and I've studied leadership for so long, both as a practitioner, where I was running a $100 million P&L for a Fortune 500 company, or as an advisor. That I just really like being that guy that helps you think of the best, the most efficient, the most effective way to get from where you are to where you need to be. And I do that in a variety of ways. I do that from, with training programs. If you need me to come in and talk to your team or your leaders or executives, I've got training programs. I do that one-on-one coaching. I'm a certified executive coach, certified by the World Coach Institute, Goldman Emotional Intelligence, who's Daniel Goleman's kind of the father of emotional intelligence, as well as the World Coach Institute. And then I also do that with the books that I write. They're usually about how can you be a more effective leader. How can you influence people to deliver more than what you are paying them to do, which is really the task of leadership.
Very good. And so when you mentioned about being an author, you have a couple of books out there. They're both like titled Impact. One is Impact: Your Power to Make a Lasting Difference, and the other is 200 Powerful Leadership and Personal Excellence Quotes. So, why are you an impactful leader, and how can others become one?
Yeah, great question. And that's actually best determined, I guess, by the people who I have tried to lead. But I would say that an impactful leader is a person that understands the three most important elements of leadership. And those elements are: number one, impactful leaders paint a very, very clear picture of what winning looks like. They can describe, they can show you, you interact with them, and you can see what success looks like. When we get to the other side, this is what the promised land will look like. That's the first thing that impactful leaders do. The second thing that impactful leaders do is they identify and help remove the barriers that stand in the way of getting to success, getting to the promised land. They can identify the things that you might have to come up against before you face it, give you the training, give you the resources so that you can get past it once you see it. Really, really important, because one thing you and I know for sure is that every plan falters a little bit once it's faced with the reality of life. And so you got to be able to identify those things that might challenge that plan and get your team and your organization ready to adjust and achieve in spite of that plan. And the third thing that leaders do, and I always hesitate in saying that this is the third thing because people might believe that this is the least important thing, but leaders inspire others to want to get on board with following and pursuing this vision. Because let's face it, I can't make you do anything. Regardless of my title, regardless of the scope of my organization, regardless of anything, I can't make you do anything. Now, there is a place for command and control, right? You get some degree of execution based on compliance, but you will never get that extra, that piece of information that you didn't know you needed, that extra discretionary resource or discretionary effort. And that is the task of leadership.
Yeah.
And so I need to have people feel empowered and engaged to give me their best, even when I don't know how to ask for their best. I've got to get them to a point where they feel inspired to join the cause or mission.
That's excellent, Galen. Now, I normally ask for three leadership tips, to give to people, and you've kind of taken the initiative as a leader and have gone ahead and given, three excellent leadership tips for anyone that's listening to this podcast here. So, I mean, yeah, you just can't. Yeah, that's excellent. And then what you're saying there reminds me of something that I read from John C. Maxwell as he talked about the five levels of leadership, and the first one being like really the title or the position.
Mm,
And many people get stuck right there in that leadership field. I have a title, you should follow what I'm saying, and if you don't, here are the consequences. And so,
hmm
never crossing over the threshold from boss to leader, you know
Yeah.
so yeah, thank you very much for that. Any other words that you would like to say about that?
Yeah, I'm a big. I can't respect myself as a leadership dude if I don't pay homage to John Maxwell. So I've read most of everything that he has written. I can't say I've read everything that he's written because he must have 150,000 books out there on the
Oh
topic.
man, I'm telling you.
But yeah, but John Maxwell, Ken Blanchard, all these guys that have come before, Fred Drucker, all these guys have come before us, and that they've really thought deeply about what it takes to be effective at this leadership space. And for me, after reading those books, I drilled it down to three things. If I can get these three things right, then I've got a shot at helping people be successful and doing it in a way where I'm not the one doing all the work. I very early in my corporate career, I identified that there's two ways that I could do this leadership thing. I was leading a team, and I got a promotion to leading a team because I was pretty good as an individual contributor. I was a pretty good salesperson. I could negotiate customer contracts, that kind of thing. And when I became a leader of a team, I decided I could do this one of two ways. I can either go out and negotiate all of the contracts with all of my customers and do all of the selling with all of my customers and make sure I deliver the commitment that the company is expecting from my team. I can go do that personally, or I could teach my team how to do that and empower them to make those kinds of decisions for themselves and give them the ability to tell me when they needed something else in order to go out there and give me their best. And I just decided that that second way of approaching this was probably going to allow me the opportunity to go out and play a round of golf every now and again, as opposed to being the Superman that shows up and saves the day.
Yeah.
And that's been my approach. And for me, I try to remember those three responsibilities that only leaders can embrace.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. The ultimate goal of leadership to me, and based on what you're saying, I'm drawing from that is leaders make leaders who make leaders who make leaders.
Exactly,
Yes, sir.
exactly.
Do you have any closing comments, contact information, and how people can get your books?
Yeah. So contact information. There's a couple of different ways you can get a hold of me. You can go to www.kilglobalcoaching.com. That's KILN globalcoaching.com. And you'll see my website and all the access to my books, which you can also find on Amazon. But the most fun way to get a hold of me is to subscribe to my brand new podcast called Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership. It's on every podcast platform. We do a lot of interviews of other great leaders, and we share our love for whiskey, jazz, and leadership. But I'll tell you, it's just a great way to just get insight about how to do this thing even better.
Very good, very good. To my audience, I really hope and encourage you to reach out to Galen, who's published leadership author, and has coached over and consulted with, over 875 senior executives, CEOs, and nonprofit leaders across 7 countries. And so that says a lot. So, Galen, thank you for honoring us with your presence.
Absolutely. Always my pleasure. And we've got to make this thing a lot quicker next time. Make sure
Absolutely.
we don't have months between our connections.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Are you promoting the right people into leadership positions? How do you know? How do you measure the outcomes, and are they the outcomes you're looking for? Please visit www.jmleadershipdevelopment.com. Again, www.jmleadershipdevelopment.com, and request a half-hour conversation to assess if we can address your leadership development needs. Oh, and by the way, always remember that leadership is influence and service.
Greetings, leaders, and thank you for enjoying another episode of Leadership Is Podcast. We had with us today Mr. Galen Bingham, and he left with us 3 impactful leadership tips, right? And so the first one that he gave us was impactful leaders describe what success looks like. Impactful leaders describes what success looks like. Number 2, he says, identify and remove the barriers to the promised land. That's what he described as success, was the promised land, right? So identify and remove the barriers to the promised land. And number 3, he says, inspire others to follow the vision. Inspire others to follow the vision. That's what impactful leadership looks like. Here at JM Leadership Development, our primary goal is to develop next generation leaders to leave the bench, embrace the growth mindset towards leadership, and step up. If you would like for us to do a virtual assessment trainings or presentations for your hidden leaders, or keynote your next event, just contact us for a free half-hour conversation at info@jmleadershipdevelopment.com. Visit our website, www.jmleadershipdevelopment.com, or call us 828-333-7234, and we will respond promptly. Please subscribe to this podcast using Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts using Jason A. Muhammad /Leadership Is. Follow us on social media. Twitter is @LeadershipJM. Facebook and Instagram is JM Leadership Development. And always remember, leadership is influence and service.